Twists and turns is what we associate with the game. But who could have predicted what we saw in BMF Season 2, Episode 1? Meech pulled off a strategic move to get into a business relationship with K9, a character who we did briefly see in Season 1, Episode 1. He's a character who gave some wise words, took care of his soldiers, but also showed how ruthless he is, and he made it known to Meech, if he doesn't get his money on time, he'll kill him. And let's just say, the gift that he gave Meech was a warning shot. But business is up and running with 12th Street and the 50 Boys putting their beef aside, pooling their resources, and with no mention of the Black Mafia family for all of Season 1, which was no surprise being set in the late 70s, but now that we're in the 80s and with the help of a new drug supply, Meech used it to convince the 12th Street Boys and the 50 Boys to unite as a Black Mafia family, but he's alone. Even if B-Mickie is his right hand man, there's trouble on the horizon. Not only is B-Mickie working with Detective Bryant, we saw a continuation from the fallout at the end of Season 1 with Terry, but that's not all. Lamar Silus is alive. Meech and I learned the importance of family dinners, sitting around our parents' table. Once we joined the 50 Boys, we ate with our crew every Sunday. That's where the real team building began, and family dinners are important. We pick up in St. Louis in 2005 with an older Terry who says they will be family no matter what. Sometimes families have fallings out, but they were forever 263. But their dinner was interrupted by none other than an older Detective Bryant who put the cuffs on Terry. Even though Terry thought he was smarter than Meech, you can never outrun your past. No matter how much caution you take and how many good deeds you do, in this game, you will forever be looking over your shoulder because this is the game. You can run, but you can't hide. Now, we started with Meech in Vegas. He was moving some drugs for K9 as a test. But what was great about this scene was the Easter eggs and reference to Rayful Edmond, who is a former drug kingpin in DC in the 80s, but also Freeway Rick Ross, who established his empire in LA. And I'm sure most of us are familiar with how Franklin Saint's story is loosely based off Freeway Rick in Snowfall. But coming back to Meech, he knew he had to improvise because he knew he would never have got past the sniffer dogs, and this does give him an idea of how he can move his supply, but we'll come back to that later when we break down Terry's car ride service. Now, they did come across each other at the basketball game where we saw K9 put down the other basketball coach, and it showed us from the get-go, K9 is someone Meech doesn't want to fuck with. In Season 1, he was working with Pat, moving smaller amounts of weight, but he taught them a lesson by killing Rock and making them bury him, just like how Meech was presented with Big L's lips. So K9 definitely means business. But Meech was able to form a relationship with K9, Detroit's long drug dealer who has a connection to the Colombians, and so with the new supply, he was able to convince the 12th Street Boys and the 50 Boys set aside their differences and unite. As a Black Mafia family, it was a smart move. Meech eliminated Lamar, so he thought anyway, but with no competition and without having to create a war, he increased his team, increased his supply, but most importantly, he remains on top. So they shared a toast and a family dinner, while on the other side, Terry, the returning wonder, and the rest of the family had a family dinner of their own. Season 2 continued with Meech and Terry's broken relationship, and it is probably best Terry does stay out of the streets. He's got a baby to look after, and he's also got Wonder back, although he's got one eye on Markeisha Taylor, who happens to be married, but that won't stop Terry. But he's also taking care of his parents who have a lot of financial issues, dealing with the damage to his eye, and starting the Flannery car ride service. Even though it's bringing in less money than the drug game, it's a legit business, less risky, and he's making an honest living that doesn't end in death or jail. But we all know the story behind Black Mafia family, and so we know Meech and Terry will eventually reunite. Terry brings this calm, strategic, and level-headedness, just like Meech said at the beginning of Season 1. Together with his vision and Terry's brains, they can be kings. And let's not forget, now that Terry's no longer running things with Meech, who did he promote as his right hand? B-Mickie, who I'll get to later on. But for the time being, there was tension from the start of the basketball game to Meech throwing a wad of cash in Terry's face and calling him broke. But Terry did make a good point when Meech tried to convince him to get back in the game. K9 killed someone over a fucking basketball game, so what's he gonna do to us when we fuck shit up? And it is a point I made earlier. K9 killed someone over a high school basketball game, and where Meech just got out of trouble with one crazy guy in Lamar, he's now in business with another. Now that's only half of Meech's problems. Another is B-Mickie. At the end of Season 1, Detective Bryant backed B-Mickie into a corner. He had the gun that connected B-Mickie to both J-Mo and Kato's death, but he did say the gun can go missing on the way back to the evidence room on one condition: he gives him Meech. So let's just keep that in mind. Now we actually start with law enforcement breaking down the turf war between the 50 Boys and the 12th Street Boys. They were able to connect the dots to Kato being the killer of Detective Lopez, which was thanks to B-Mickie's help. But the investigation does remain active. Now this is Detective Veronica Jin, who replaces Lopez as Bryant's partner, something that didn't sit well with him at first, but she quickly showed why she means business. She's also got a key eye for detail, and she noticed the way Bryant looked at B-Mickie. Lopez was onto Bryant in season 1 when he was working with Meech, and so I wouldn't be surprised to see Veronica connecting the dots to Bryant blackmailing B-Mickie. These things tend to definitely swing in roundabouts, but let's come back to that scene from season 1 and connect the dots. The evidence for JMO and Kato's murder did go missing, and that's what Bryant has hidden away. He's got B-Mickie right where he wants him, and reminds him of the consequences of failing to bring him info about Meech. So he does bow to Bryant's pressure. He tells him how Terry's out the game and Meech is running shit on his own, but Bryant wants something bigger. So B-Mickie is in a real lose-lose situation here, and the game is a vicious cycle. You may have heard me say it before in power terms, but Kato was blackmailed by Lamar in pursuit of Meech, and now the roles are reversed. B-Mickie is the one who's being blackmailed, this time by Bryant, but for the same outcome, to get Meech. We could also see throughout episode 1, he was playing both sides. He seemed fidgety, and he wasn't even fazed at the fact Meech promoted him to his right-hand man. What makes this situation even deeper, his back is against the wall, but he's also the sole carer for his mother who's been ill since season 1. But we all know how this ends, and B-Mickie is in a world of shit. Now this is where it gets interesting. Bryant told his partner that losing Lopez changed him, and he wasn't as transparent as he could have been, so he vows not to make the same mistake, which is why he took her into the room which held Lamar Silus. In season 1, the assumption was that Lamar was dead. The crime board even said Lamar was deceased, but they've been keeping him under a false name in hospital in the hope he wakes up and he'll tell them who his shooter was, who of course was Meech. But will Lamar snitch? Probably not. He knows the street code and he'll definitely want revenge, which is bad news for Meech. So when he's back on his feet and returns to the streets, you can guarantee he's coming for Meech, his business and his family, because let's not forget how Meech held Zoe and how that tore his relationship with Monique. So when Lamar Silus is up, he'll be gunning for everyone close to Meech. Now elsewhere, something worth mentioning is the relationship between Lucille and Charles. It isn't in the best of places, and Nicole White, who plays Lucille, had this to say in a recent interview. "I think that things are too difficult right now to be able to see things clearly, and Lucille is working like crazy to manage and keep things together, working at Wendy's, and although Lucille finds joy and pride in everything she does, it's hard to kind of make ends meet by doing all of that, so she's exhausted." It also doesn't help that Terry's overheard the conversation with Wanda, because it was Lucille's plan all along to ask Wanda to leave to force Terry out of the game. So this whole family dynamic is one to keep an eye on, because early cracks are definitely beginning to appear. But that's a breakdown of BMF Season 2, Episode 1, a premiere which has set the tone. This season will definitely be filled with trouble for Meech, in the form of K9, B-Mickie, and potentially Lamar when he realizes he's still alive. Because when he's on his feet,